Namaskar. I'm Umacharan Pati, Deputy Registrar of Gangadhar Mehra University. I welcome all of you on behalf of the university to this online interaction session with the renowned former professor of Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, Professor R. Ravi Kumar sir. We have with us our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor N. Nagaraju sir. Professor R. Ravi Kumar sir has already joined and started interacting with us in different way. We have with us Head of the School of Commerce, Dr. Asia Acharya, Head of the School of Economics, Dr. Prabhati Panda, Head of the School of Management, and Chairman PG Council, Controller of Examination, all heads of the departments, and also faculties from other departments besides Commerce, Economics, and Management. They have also joined to listen to this lecture by Professor R. Ravi Kumar. We are thankful to you, sir, for honoring the invitation of our Honorable Vice Chancellor and sparing your valuable time for the academic enrichment of our faculty. Now I request our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor N. Nagaraju sir, for a few words of encouragement.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Pati, and all my colleagues at Gangadhar Mehra University. I join you all in welcoming Professor Ravi Kumar, a very senior academic from Indian Institute of Bangalore. And I think it's a long time since I am seeing Professor Ravi Kumar. Since we met at Indian Institute of Bangalore, he helped us at Central University of Karnataka with his suggestions and advice at the research board. And he has been on the advisory board of several governmental agencies, one of the senior academics. Now that I have seen after retirement, he looks more academic. Without losing much time, I would ask Dr. Pati to invite Professor Ravi Kumar for the talk. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Before that, I request the head of the School of Commerce to briefly introduce our guest and also talk about this interaction session briefly. Dr. Asia Acharya, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Pati. Esteemed Vice Chancellor Gangadhar Mehra University, Professor N. Nagaraju, sir. Revered guest and resource person, Professor R. Ravi Kumar. Honorable Chairperson, PG Council, Professor Moin Mohammed. Respected heads of departments, Registrar Sri G.C. Singh, Deputy Registrar Dr. U.C. Pati, Controller of Examinations Dr. H.K. Naik, and my dear colleagues. I feel greatly honored in welcoming you all to this session, which will be an interactive session on the topic entitled How to Develop Learning Ecosystem. And the entire credit for organizing this session goes to our Honorable VC sir. And also on this occasion, I take this opportunity to thank my colleagues in the Department of Economics, in my department, and also in the Department of Management Studies for their active involvement in and support for organizing this session. So let me give a brief introduction of this topic. So the current pandemic has taken its toll, all of you know this, and it has shattered the societies across globe in practically all spheres of human life. Almost all facets of human life have been severely affected, especially in the second wave. Education being a sector of special significance and an inseparable part of modern civil society has also been grossly affected. The sector is being revamped across the planet, marked by an incessant use of technology. The revamp can be witnessed by the increased usage of digital technology, multimedia, augmented reality, online study material, and e-assessment in education that has transformed the chalk and duster model of learning space into a virtual learning ecosystem. So this virtual mode of learning, in spite of its underlying benefits, in the prevailing situation has its own limitations also and challenges, which are behavioral, psychological, and infrastructural in nature. The reason for the trouble faced by the stakeholders in education could be attributed to the human tendency to resist change, the deficiency in handling a new model of learning, the limited availability of required software and hardware, mounting pressure on the parents for their increased role in the learning of their words, and partly as the parents are not conversant with technology or facing financial difficulties. Most prominently, students lacking interest in online learning. So, as their social need is not catered to in this non-personal mode of learning. The prime challenge faced by the teachers in the wake of the rapid shift in the remote mode of instruction is managing their relationship with the students as the dynamics of student-teacher interaction are being redefined. So, there are so many questions which are striking our mind. For example, what will be the new imperative strategy which will facilitate a seamless shift to a new learning ecosystem, which will have the potential to improve the student-teacher collaboration for an elevated learning experience? Then how the choice of pedagogy and strategies need to be aligned and customized to the beliefs and expectations of the stakeholders in the emerging learning ecosystem. To answer questions like this and many more, and to further a fruitful discussion on this topic, we have in our midst today a very distinguished resource person, and he is Professor Ravi Kumar, R. Ravi Kumar. Till recently, Dr. Kumar has been a tenured professor in organizational behavior at the Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, an institute that enjoys a top rank over the years both locally and globally. And he has served this institution with distinction from 1986 to 2019, and he holds a master's degree in psychology and parapsychology and a doctoral degree in organizational behavior, both from Andhra University, Valtier, India. Dr. Kumar has over 40 years of teaching, training, consulting, and research experience in the fields of organizational behavior, human resource management, in addition to wide-ranging academic administration. He has been recipient of fellowships from European Foundation for Management Development and Association of Management Development in South Asia. Dr. Kumar's international academic engagements include visiting professorships held at ISED. ISED is a global business school situated in Barcelona, Spain, known for the quality of its education, international outlook, and its focus on holistic personal development. SAR has consistently over the years and across institutions, he has been rated as an effective teacher and a trainer by thousands of students at graduate, postgraduate, and doctoral levels, and corporate executives belonging to different organizational echelons and cultures. Dr. Kumar has developed several teaching materials that include broadcast quality management educational films in video format. His innovative teaching methods as well as pioneering interventions as the chairperson placements IIM Bengaluru have been documented in national and international media that includes CNBC and BBC. Dr. Kumar had consulting assignments with many governmental institutions, public and private sector organizations, and multinational companies. The wide range of the client list denotes his diverse consulting expertise. He has contributed to the institution building and corporate governance by being on the board of many governing bodies of institutions like IIM Bengaluru, Maulana Azad National Institute of Technology, All India Board of Management Studies, AICTE, National Institute of Financial Management, then National Institute of Administrative Research, National Academy of Legal Studies and Research, Andhra Pradesh, then IFIM Business School, to mention a few. Dr. Kumar has been on several journals' editorial boards that include International Journal of Leadership Education, UK, and holds membership with American Psychological Association and Academy of Management, the United States of America. He is currently researching on strategic institution building, transferable leadership, managing on the edge, and organizational transformation. So after his superannuation on 31st May 2019, Dr. Kumar is serving as an honorary officer at the School of Management Studies, University of Hyderabad, Hyderabad. Thank you, sir, for giving your consent to address our faculty member today. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Now I request our chief guest and chief speaker, Professor R. Ravi Kumar, sir, for his address. Sir.
Good evening, colleagues. It's a pleasure to be. It's an occasion for me to feel proud because normally teachers end up having students to interact. There's nothing new. But very rarely a teacher will get a chance to interact with fellow teachers. On a very, very rare occasion, I feel privileged. I thank each one of you for giving me this opportunity. Now, as I said, I understand they are faculty members belonging to 3 different streams. They have their own distinct identity, but they're highly connected: commerce, economics, and management. Right? Now, I don't know what is the time constraint, because you tell me. I do not want all of us as teachers. We know that we have a tendency to go over the board and don't close it on time. You please tell me how much time I have to speak. Then after that, we'll have a discussion. That is one mode. Another way is I will provoke you, you will respond. I don't know whether the system permits me to do that. Fair enough. Now, let me ask you a question. My topic is how to develop a learning ecosystem. So obviously, the context of building a learning ecosystem is in an educational institution. I thought that's very, very important for us to know. We are not talking about developing a learning ecosystem in society or at a country, no. Not in a corporate organization, not in an NGO. We are talking about how to develop a learning ecosystem in an environment where there are people ready to learn and the people ready to teach. And this is what we call it as an educational institution. You might call it a university, you might call it an institute, you might call it a school. Depends on the country and the location on the globe. Now, whatever little research I've done the last few decades made me realize that educational institutions, they become great or excellent. One, not because of the place where they are located. Many people get confused on this. We think if the institution is physically located in a place, that will be significantly responsible for its growth, development, and success. But my research says the other way around. Let me give you a couple of examples. Place is definitely not an important factor. It may be a facilitative factor, and its contribution could be maximum 10%. I'll give you 2 examples. At the drop of a hat, an average Indian student would like to go to either US or to Europe for higher education. If he qualifies and if he has the enough of either intellectual resource or financial resource. Let me explain what I mean by intellectual resource. If I write a competitive exam like GRE or GMAT, and if I get the top score, several European and American institutions would fund my stay there, would give me fellowship, when will give me a tuition viva. So place doesn't matter. We go to an absolutely unknown place. I'll give you a couple of examples in India. You look at some of the institutions that were set up and that were looked up even today. For example, you look at the first IIT. The first IIT was set up in Kharagpur, which is a remote place even today. You don't have air connectivity, the train connectivity is bad. You have to travel all the way to Calcutta from anywhere in India, then take a train and come down to Kharagpur. Look at another institution called Indian School of Mines, now known as IIT. It is in Dhanbad. Okay. You look at IIM, the first IIM that came into existence, because I know there's a management faculty there, I'm slightly emphasizing on that. If you look at the first IIM came in Calcutta. And Calcutta is definitely not a place that people feel hot about. This includes both the people who stay in Calcutta, those people who are outside Calcutta. Okay. So Calcutta is not a great place in that sense. It is a lovable place, but it's not a great place. Now, look at Ahmedabad, which came into existence after a few weeks. Ahmedabad connectivity is the poorest. So there are so many institutions, say in Noida. Have they come up? Noida is next to Delhi. It's almost Delhi. So many institutions have come up in Gurgaon. So location or the place is not a factor for an educational institution to grow and succeed. I hope you understand why am I saying this. All of you are working in Gangadhar Mehar University, which is located in Sambalpur. So most of you are in the impression that we are disadvantaged. It's not. You look at a highly respected two institutions in US. Both are on two sides of the river, Boston River. One is Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT. Other side is Harvard. Boston is not well-connected place, and these are not in Boston. You have to travel quite a bit of distance. World's first fast-track MBA program came in a place called Fontainebleau near Paris, where I taught for some time. Fontainebleau is away from Paris. So please understand, the place in which an education institution is located is not a factor that contributes for its growth and success. The second one is, it's not pricing. Even if you offer education free, people may not come. Please understand this. There's so many government institutions, education institutions, they charge a minuscule fee. Still, people don't go there. So it is not the place, it's not the price. Then what it is? My research says it's the kind of people involved there. People means, for an education institution, I'm not talking about promoters. I'm not talking about who owns it. I'm talking about basically three sets of people. The faculty, a part of which I'm addressing now. Second, the staff, the support staff. And the third one is students. Now, you might say, isn't this a chicken and egg problem? IITs are known to have great students. IIMs are known to have great students. But if you look at the beginning, who joined the institution first? Students or faculty? It is the faculty who joined. So for me, it is the great faculty or competent faculty or intellectually committed faculty are responsible in bringing in great students. Some of you have taken tuition while you are studying in high school or college. You must have remembered we traveled quite a bit of distance to take tuition to our tuition master's house. So place did not matter. The distance did not matter. So what mattered is who is the teacher. So I'm trying to impress on you, please remember, if you have passionate faculty who are ready to die to teach, I think that's the greatest strength of that institute. If you have great teachers and the news spreads like a wildfire, I'll give you one simple example. You know, there's a place called Kota in Rajasthan. From the last 30 years, Kota is known for coaching institutions to put in people into IITs. I don't know how many of you know. They have opened branches elsewhere. That's a different story. But Kota is a place which most of us not even heard in Rajasthan. But a student who wants to make it, crack his JEE, crack his other exams, he will go there. Absolutely not a comfortable climate. Ahmedabad is a nightmare. I'm telling you, Calcutta climate is okay. Among the first three IIMs, perhaps Bangalore has got the best climate. But that's a different story. Not a livable condition. Don't have a great infrastructure. But both IIM Ahmedabad and IIM Calcutta have proved their worth. It proves my point. If you have great teachers, it leads to attraction of highly committed students. What do you mean by committed students? Are the students have unquenchable thirst to learn? So if you have on one side teachers who love teaching, on the other side students who are thirsty to learn, I think that's the seed of a great educational institution. In this opinion, in this context, I have a position. I firmly believe it is the faculty who has a larger role than the students. Because faculty in India, in any language, they're known as guru. What does guru mean? Bigger, larger, heavier, impactful. So you have a larger role to play as teachers. Now let me concentrate on that. Let me propose a question to you. What is the purpose of teaching? Teaching should result in learning. Teaching should result in learning. Otherwise, it is a teaching a wall. So if the impact of teaching can be measured through the learning. If students don't learn anything, that means something is wrong with the teacher, not with the student. So we normally hear in society, the purpose of education is building character. Now it sounds very good, but you have to understand what's character. My understanding is character is a behavior that's not change because there's change in a context. Let me explain. Suppose there's honesty in me. I remain honest. At home, I remain honest in a bus. I remain honest in a hotel where I have a breakfast. I remain honest in my office. I lead my life honestly wherever I am. Doesn't matter whether I'm working, whether I'm sitting, whether I'm standing in a bus. So my behavior is not specific to a context. Whether I work in India, whether I'm in India, whether I'm not in India, whether I'm in Pakistan or Sri Lanka, I continue to show certain behaviors. And this is my character. In an epic that you're familiar in Ramayana, we say the character of Rama is Pran jaye par vachan na jaye. Rama continued to behave whatever principles he had, whether he is in Ayodhya, whether he is traveling from Ayodhya down south, came to Godavari, lost his wife, went in search of, went down, went to Sri Lanka, supposed to be, and he has come back. And he became a king. Now, I don't know how many of you are familiar. After he was crowned, Rama makes a statement. Ranjayate iti rajaha. That's his agenda. The job of a king is to keep his people happy. If I can set up a goal for me, all of us cannot become Rama, I agree, but take a cue from there. If I say that my job is to make a student learn, when would a student learn? A student will learn when you evolve an ecosystem, a system that facilitates learning. So, if you look at the two aspects of character, one I already mentioned, that character means my behavior does not change because there is a change in a season and change in a reason. But at the same time, I am sensitive to the context. Please understand this. For example, I respect elders, irrespective of who they are. I respect parents. Doesn't matter whether he or she is my parent or anybody's parent. That's character. At the same time, I am sensitive to the needs of each student. So there is a contextual specificity and there is a contextual generality. This is the complex aspect and interesting aspect of character. I love my mother, I love my daughter, I love my wife. But the way I express my love to each one of them is not the same. So the love is general, but expression of love is different. Similarly, I respect. The way I convey my respect to my boss is different from the way I convey my respect to my colleague, the way I convey my respect to my subordinate. The manifestations may be different, but the purpose may be different. The purpose is same, but the process may be different. I hope I'm clear. Now, what do we have to do in the role of a teacher? Please understand there are 4 important things which any human being, irrespective of his gender or age, will look for. These are the 4 factors. And I think if these 4 factors, if we keep it in our mind as teachers, I think we can be very, very effective. The purpose of education is to enhance your success. A person will come to school so that the education he gets, the learning he gets, will make him more successful in life. So the first factor is, can I impress upon a student, if you learn this, it will help you to be more successful. Quite often, we are not able to do this as teachers. For example, high school mathematics. Mathematics teacher teaches Pythagoras theorem. All of you must be knowing what is Pythagoras theorem. We learned it by root, but we never learned it in the way it should have been learned, precisely because our teachers did not tell us what is its application. So what is its relevance? Application and relevance are 2 parameters that will make a student realize the value of what he's learning. Otherwise, he will learn like most of us have done. You learn it, you memorize it, and you finish it. And that's what happens when you finish your 4 years of engineering and come to, or a 3 years bachelor's degree and come to an MCom, you forgot what you studied in your first year of BA. That's the problem. We don't feel emotionally attached. You get emotionally attached to what you learned when you see a relevance of it. That's one. Second one is satisfaction. Would education help me to be more satisfied with my wife, with my life, with my job, with my country? If education does not enhance my satisfaction, why should I study at all? I'm more satisfied by being an illiterate, by not going to school. So second factor is satisfaction. The third factor is happiness. Would it enhance my happiness? Can I be more happy? Can I make others more happy? The last one is peace. Can I be in peace with me? Can I generate peace for others? Now, as I said, if you can keep these 4 factors in your mind, how can I enhance the success, satisfaction, happiness, and peace? These are 4 different aspects of life. They are connected, but they are not sequential. A person can be happy without being successful, without being satisfied. A person can be peace without achieving success, without being satisfied in life, and without being happy. If you see some people who has given up everything in life, they are in peace with themselves. They're not achieved any success. Their success is that they're peaceful. Their happiness is being peaceful. And their satisfaction is being peaceful. So they are different, they are connected, but they're not the same. Now, one of the most important things I want you to understand is the job of a teacher, irrespective of the discipline, is not to dump information. Unfortunately, most of us believe in this. The more the information I dump, I'll give you a simple example. When you dump information, you are known as a respectable source of information. The respect a teacher gets is not just by providing information alone. Can I provide insights? Not explaining what it is, why it is, what are the implications. Insights and implications are 2 important aspects in teaching. Unfortunately, we don't pay attention. We have a textbook. I'll give you another example. We have a textbook. What is in the textbook, we'll try to take it to the class. And students have changed over generations. Nowadays, earlier, we used to think the only source of learning is the teacher. Teacher is the only source of learning. That's why we say Guru Mukha. But unfortunately, or fortunately, that's not the only source of learning. Thanks to pandemic now, they have multiple sources of learning. So, from teacher-centric learning, you have to move to student-centric learning. Can I provide some resources other than me to learn? So that will make developing a learning ecosystem. Now, I use the word learning. One of the most important aspects is how can I increase the learnability in a student? Learnability is an ability to learn. Please remember, if I can kindle a desire in a student to learn, if I can create an opportunity to learn, the ability to learn automatically develop. I'll give you a simple example. If you have a strong desire to make money, and if I have an opportunity, will I not learn how to take bribes? As simple as this. I'm giving you a very, very simple, not so positive example. I'm aware of it. So as a result, my job as a teacher is not to dump information, but can I make students learn by increasing their desire to learn? Giving them opportunities to learn. This is where our role has to change. The last one point I would like to tell you is, if I can enhance the exposure of a student, exposure is I go myself tell, this is what this is about. You will get some more information in this book, in this video, in this website, through this link. You are increasing the sources of learning. So you're increasing the exposure. Second, can I help them realize the importance of effort? What I understood is there are only two things you get in life without any effort. Others are jealous about you. You don't have to put any effort. Second one is enemies. You get enemies without any effort. But if you want to learn, you have to put effort. If you want to learn how to teach, you have to put more effort. The third one is, which is a problem, I agree. This is the complaint all elders have towards all youngsters, and it continues to happen. This is what we call it as endurance. Ability to wait for things to happen. Unfortunately, generation after generation, thanks to the changes in technology, most of us, our ability to wait for things to happen has come down. I'll give you a simple example. 20 years ago, when you start your computer, desktop computer, it used to take about 3 minutes for you to boot and you can start your work. Nowadays, we can't even wait for 5 minutes. We can't even wait for 10 seconds. We want instant results. Thanks to technology. Fine. So if I can enhance the importance of, as I said, exposure, effort, and endurance, and to do all these three, as teachers, we have to learn and demonstrate our capability to leverage technology. Our capability to leverage technology. One of the biggest challenges most of the teachers face is they can't stay up to date with technology. You know the reason? Most of us, we think the minute I become a teacher, I don't have to learn. When people introduce me and say that he's a very, very learned professor, I tell them it is an oxymoron. It cannot be. If I have stopped learning, I can't be a teacher. It might look little trivial, but I firmly believe that one of the best ways to stay as a responsible teacher is to stay in touch with technology. Most of the time, teachers don't do that. They don't increase their exposure, they don't put effort, and they don't have endurance. Now, if you don't have, how do you expect to convey to the students that they should value this. My last point is, what do I do to provide a learning ecosystem is realize the value of different methods that we have. On one side, which is a predominantly used, is a lecture method. We misuse technology. Most of the teachers now, they can't take a class without a PowerPoint. Even though they don't have any point to convey, they have PowerPoint. That's the problem. Now, please remember, what do I do in a class is as important as pre-class learning, both for me as well as for the student. What do you mean by pre-class learning? Spending some time in looking at other resources. There's so many resources available and we don't pay attention. Student has a right not to know the sources. But as a teacher, if I don't know the several sources available, I'm at loss. I'm at loss. What do we do in the class? In the class, we have, in a sense, lecture to lab. Please do some digging of information. What are the different methodologies called pedagogy? It's a stronger word. Well, how do I convey the information? So the purpose is, how can I make learning inclusive? How do I push a person as a student from a passive position to active position? How do I make him my learning partner? For this, depending on the subject, depending on the students, their capabilities, you have to choose a particular method. To choose a method, you should have get yourself trained in that. If you're not trained in that, how do you do that? Learning has 4 phases, whether it is learning of a teacher or learning of a student. The first stage is called unconscious incompetence. First, I should know what I don't know. For example, I don't know how many of you are familiar, Massachusetts Institute of Technology from the last 20 years, they have what is called OCW, Open Courseware. Several professors of several disciplines, whatever they use in the class, they dump it on the institute's website. Anybody can go and see it. I don't know how many of us have leveraged it. How many of us have leveraged? I do not know. So, unconscious incompetence is realizing what you don't know. Yes, I don't know what is OCW. After that stage, you have to put lots of effort by moving to another stage called conscious incompetence. Yes. Now I know that I don't know what is OpenCourseWare. With effort, you move to a stage called conscious competence. You know what is conscious competence? Conscious competence is recollect the way you learned how to ride a bicycle. The whole world knows that you are just learned by cycling. Your effort is visible to the whole world. You're conscious that you're a new learner, you just got it, and the whole world also knows. If you remember correctly, when you learned cycling, your friend would have helped you, and without your knowledge, he would have left you, and you're able to cycle. And you suddenly discovered that you learned cycling. Then you start telling him with fear, don't leave me, don't leave me. He says, no, I'm behind you, don't bother. But he will not be holding you. Once he builds a confidence in you, that your learned competence, then you think no end of yourself. Then he'll ask you, ring the bell. The minute he'll ask you to ring the bell, you lose the balance. That means you are conscious of the learning process. You're conscious of what you learned and what you are yet to learn. The last stage is unconscious competence. The competence becomes an integral part of your natural behavior. This is what we call it as a seasoned teacher, right? This does not necessarily mean you don't need practice. You need practice. You need practice so that your energy levels remain the same, not that you're learning something new. If you ask a performing artist, anybody in the world, they will tell you practice is very, very important. Practice is, I am pushing to know my limits. Okay. Now, the last point I would like to tell you is we have a bigger responsibility than students, with which I started, right? If I can develop a learning ecosystem, students don't come to the class for the sake of attendance. Most of the time, students come to classes in our country because there is a compulsory attendance. So what is important for learning is not attendance, but attentiveness. If you can enhance attentiveness, you build a very, very meaningful learning ecosystem. I will pass over here and I'll take any questions from you. Please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the nice lecture. Now I request our faculty members to interact with Professor R. Ravikumar, sir. Sir, let me start the question and answer session with a question from my side. Sir, you talked about the role of teachers in character building, because the role of education is to build character. And you also talked about the important role that teachers play in developing the learning ecosystem. Sir, what is your take on the role of teachers in institution building, which is a bigger concept than your character building, I believe?
No, we have to understand what is institution building, because quite often we get confused with the buildings of the institution in the name of institution building.
Sir.
Most, I can understand in the beginning stages, you have to build infrastructure. Please remember one thing. Please remember one thing. If you go to a movie theater, if the movie is absorbing, you don't care how comfortable is the seat, yes or no?
Sir.
So unfortunately, what happens is, this is not an excuse not to have good infrastructure. Please understand. Did we stop going to any pilgrimage because we don't have infrastructure there? Did people stop go to Kumbh Mela during pandemic because there is pandemic? Have they stopped? Whatever you see in media. See, what drives people is what they value.
Sir.
What I'm saying is, you need infrastructure. You definitely need infrastructure. I'm not questioning that. But mere infrastructure will not lead to learning. In that case, the best learning should happen in a 5-star hotel. I lived in 5-star hotel half of my life. Right? But at home, I can sleep more comfortably. Why? Because it's my home. I might sleep on the floor, but 18-inch spring mattress will not give me sleep. So what is important for me? I hope you get my point.
Sir.
So institution building means what? See, one of the biggest challenges that we have is, we think job of a teacher is to teach and get out. See, most of us value that I have taken a teaching profession precisely because of my value towards freedom. Freedom is not without responsibility. Now, two important issues when it comes to teachers I have noticed, including myself. I'm not excluding. We always blame the head of the department, who is playing the role of institution builder. Yes, son.
Right, sir.
Head of the department in Indian university system known as headache of the department. I don't know if you heard this expression. Head of the departments, the role incumbents feel it's a headache. Many people are not interested, but it's on a rotation, like a BD. Everybody has to take the responsibility on some rules, only between professors, or you should be a reader. I don't know what are the norms currently. But unfortunately, what happens is, we want somebody else to do that. Okay, let's presume when somebody else does it, we don't even cooperate with them. Most of the times, the major source of frustration for teachers is the administrators. I don't know. Most of the teachers hate bureaucracy. They hate babus. because babus take decisions which not to our liking. So institution building means what? It may be viewed as non-classroom, but it did not be seen as non-academic. Please understand the difference. I have joined as a teacher on my own choice. I joined precisely because of certain reasons. I can do my teaching, I can do my research, I can do my consulting. Fine. But I also get a chance to play a leadership role. And that's what you're calling it as institution building. And everybody may not succeed. Also remember, please remember, everybody may not succeed. The question here is, can I enjoy the administrative role? My request for all of you is, you take up the leadership role called institution building, but it need not be at the cost of teaching. Somehow in India, we believe in this dichotomy. If you are a fantastic teacher, you have no research. If you have lots of research publications, you are a useless teacher. If you are a good teacher and a good researcher, you can never be a good administrator. Most of the administrators are lousy teachers and lousy researchers. Where do we go? My position is, doesn't matter. I may not be good all the time in teaching. If you get a chance, please take the role of institution builder. If you don't do it, somebody will do it and make your life miserable. I hope you understand. If I don't take the leadership role, some guy will become a leader. And he will dictate terms to be what I should do. I hope I am clear.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Any other question from other faculty?
Sir, my name is Dr. Srinivas Das. I am from management areas. I would like to, it is not a question, it is a one type of honest advice to the speaker. If possible, then you maybe say something on about the
your voice is not very clear. I don't know. Shall I cut off my mic so that it will be better?
Yeah, sir, my question is that you have better experience, you will be explain the China education policy and India education policy, and China teaching methodology and India teaching methodology. There is significant differences. Where the China, the means teaching pattern is more skill oriented, practical oriented, whereas in India educational, the teaching methodology is only theoretical aspects. Okay, what is your view? Am I right? And if I am right, then what way we will be develop our teaching methodology so that our student will be successfully compete to the China students in international market?
No, it's a very laudable question, but I am afraid I don't have an answer directly to you. First thing is, I firmly believe we don't know what is happening in China. I firmly believe, because it is not a democratic country like us. The entire country is behind a big iron curtain. Forget about claims. How can we be sure that this is what is happening in China? I do not know, first. Second is, what happens in this country is very difficult to believe. I'll give you a simple example. I firmly believe, if you are a very, very competent teacher, if you're able to deliver, the best institution will take you. I firmly believe. I never believed in pedigree. If I look at my life, I'm from a university. I studied in a university. All my degrees are from India. Right? Normally, to get into an IIM, if you think that's of some interest here, right? Either you should have education in US, or you should have studied in IIT in India, then US. I had neither. I'm not an engineer. Incidentally, I'm from BCom. I'm the first Indian who did masters in psychology and parapsychology after doing BCom. Right? So what I'm saying is, what is China doing? How authentic is the information? First. Second thing is, China may be doing Is it suitable to our context? Now, if you want to bring that methods, you have to change the political system here. You have to change the political system here. I'll give you a very simple example what I've done in my life. At IIM Bangalore, I happened to be the first teacher, made it very clear to the students, listen, we have to learn to show certain professionalism. MBA is a professional degree. You may have a paper, but if you don't have a professional behavior, you can never be a successful professional. So our class starts at 10. I am in the class 2 minutes before 10 o'clock. I give a leverage of 5 minutes. At 10:05, I will lock the door. Nobody can enter my class, including my director or dean. Even President of India, he has to wait. If he wants to meet me, he can meet me after the class. And I'll open this door only after the class hour is over. And I will not extend the discussion. Okay? I did it only for the first 3 days. After that, you'll be surprised. I have not latched the door. Nobody came late. Nobody left the class because they found class is more interesting than the time they spent with their girlfriends or boyfriends or in canteen. So it is the job of a teacher to make the class interesting. I'll give you a simple example. It doesn't matter whether you do Kathakali, Kathak, Bharatanatyam, Kuchipudi or cabaret. My job is to keep the students awake in the class. If I can keep them awake, I can awaken them easily. So my job is to how do I generate interest in the students. Once I generate interest in the students, I can make it an inclusive learning. I hope I answered your question. Chinese methods, even if we know it for sure, if you bring them down to in this country, it will be a revolution. It is like wearing a helmet. Why do we wear a helmet? Tell me. We wear a helmet for the sake of police. We never wear a helmet to protect your head. You must have seen a difference between first wave and second wave. In the first wave, people stayed at home, inside the homes, the so-called lockdown, because they thought they're doing a favor to the Prime Minister of the country. In second wave, after relaxations, still I don't see people on the road. They're staying back at home because they realize their life is in danger. So why are people staying back at home? Most of the people, because they know that if they go out, the life is in danger. If I can bring this change, I think there's some impact in what I have done in the norm of teaching. I hope I answered your question on education in China and education in India.
Thank you, sir. Sir, well, it is quite perfect to make a distinction between satisfaction, happiness, and peace. But I have some difficulty in just.
You are forgetting
Hello?
success.
Yeah,
You are forgetting
success.
I said in the success, and peace.
Yeah, peace. But how can one be happy without being at peace? And how can one be at peace without being happy?
Okay, you ask a politician, you'll get an answer. He is happy, but he is not peaceful. After winning elections, he is successful. No, one second.
Sir,
You ask a question, I'm giving that.
It may be true for. Sir, it may be true for politicians. It may not be true for a teacher.
One second. You asked me a question. Please allow me to answer. First answer I gave you is straight answer. You ask a politician who has won the election.
Okay.
Successful. Okay.
Sir, another question is that.
No, let me finish this question, sir. Let me finish this question. I'm not finished answering.
Okay.
There could be a student. Let me give an example. You said politician, you just brushed him aside as if that guy is not part of society. No, that's a different story. You take a student. He may be happy because he does not see any value in learning. People who spend time in canteen, they're happy with the education institution. In several European countries, they have an amusement center in the institute. But there hardly anybody there. 24/7 coffee shop will be there. People, the difference is they pay through their nose. They pay through their nose in non-Indian countries. In India, we subsidize education. Since government is subsidizing education, private institutions also cannot have a very high fee. The fee in IIT, to some extent, influences the fee in a private university. Please understand. Higher education is the responsibility of both Government of India, that's why you have central universities, IITs, IIMs, and as well as the states. So there is, just think it over, you'll get an answer. Don't expect an answer from me at this stage. A person may be successful, may not be satisfied. I'll tell you, I get 75%. I'm successful definitely compared to others, but I may not be satisfied with 75 marks. Possible? I'm not happy with my performance and I'm not at peace. Suppose a person has realized all this education is colossal waste. He joined this college to have fun. He'll have fun. He will fail and he is at peace. Please understand, when we use the word peace, we are using from a positive tone. The another angle of peace is he's a shameless character. He doesn't have any self-esteem. He does not want society to recognize him. All the sannyasis, they don't care anything for society. Please understand this. Go ahead. I hope I answered your question. Anybody else? Hello.
Any other question?
Sir,
Yes.
sir, I am SC Acharya, Syamacharan Acharya. I teach commerce, sir, in this university.
Ji.
Sir, I have the same question for you, sir. You just try to reply me. Sometimes we get too much preoccupied with our administrative assignments, so much so that we are not in a position to give the justice the academic assignments deserve. So how to strike out a balance between the administrative assignments and the academic assignments? Sir, please.
Sir, my thing is that depends on the context. Now, unfortunately, if you look at it from a head of the institution's point of view, somebody has to take this responsibility. But that's not lifelong. Please remember, your job is, you're called a teacher, you have to do teaching. Now, if administration is taking too much of your time, for some time you can sacrifice your teaching opportunity, but it cannot be all the time. It cannot be all the time. That's why headship is on rotation, sir. You're not a lifelong head. You're head only for a term. You're not a dean lifelong. You're dean only for a term. If you are a program chief, you are a program chief only for an academic cycle, 2 years, 3 years. If you're admissions in charge, you are only for 4 years or 5 years. Even the so-called political leaders, once they win the election, till the next election, we don't know when the next election, generally. So it's a tenure. My request for you would be, don't hate administrative rules. If you start hating some fellow who is less intelligent than you, less committed than you, less capable than you, will become your boss and will make your life miserable. So I always say that institution building work is an opportunity for you to show your leadership capability. Do it once, do it better than the others, and you simply say, I've done my job. I think I've done better than what all my predecessors have done. That's what is visible. Now I enjoy my teaching. Let me go back to my teaching. And
Thank you.
please remember, no head of the institution would like to lose a good teacher.
Right.
Because good teachers are effective teachers. Everybody cannot be an effective teacher. Please understand. Every song sung by Lata Mangeshkar with the same passion, has it become a hit? Tell me.
Thank
All
you.
dance programs of Keluchavan Mahapatra are liked by all audience. All the novels written by Panchkadi Dev, I'm talking about Odisha. Panchkadi Dev. He's the first man who wrote the detective novels in India.
Sir.
Tell me, I have a dear friend from Odisha called H. N. Nagan and Gangaram Pethoda, Sam. All his works have resulted in patent award. All his programs worked on it. So it's like a farmer. You take a handful of seeds, same soil, same love, same effort, you sprinkle. Hopefully 90% will germinate. 10% may not germinate. The job of a teacher is also like that. It's like farming. Please remember one thing. You may teach this much. You may teach this much. What one student learns is this much. Another student learns this much. Another student learns this much. Another student learns this much. There's some student who learn this, which you're not taught. So please remember the difference between teaching and learning. I'll give you a very, very simple example. You teach Ramayana. And the purpose of teaching Ramayana, as the title says, is the path taken by Rama. That's why it's called Ramayan. The path taken by Rama. Right? You ask what is the learning from Ramayana, 10 people, they'll give you different learnings. If you ask who is the best character you liked, somebody will say Mandara. But Mandara is not according to you, but that's the learning he got. Please remember, learning is highly subjective. I value my learning. And we have to encourage this. There's no way. There's no way. So, you might have an intended purpose of learning through your teaching. You have to ensure at least that much is learned. But please remember, people learn beyond. People learn beyond. I hope I am clear.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Sir, I'm Prakati from Department of Economics. I have a question.
Go ahead, ma'am.
It's a good thing to increase learnability of the students, but everything is not in the hands of the teacher.
You
In
said
our cases,
No, I couldn't hear. Did you said everything is not in the hands of teacher, right?
yeah, because the students also they have an eye beyond the class, beyond the course. After that, what is the employment opportunity?
Okay.
If that is enough, their attention will be enough. Otherwise, it is very difficult to hold the attention of all the students. Very few students will take interest in the course and studies in that case. So,
No, first thing, I never said everything is with the teacher. I'll give you a simple example. Quite often we mention this. We say, it's a very popular English saying, in India we use it very often. You know, we can give an admission to a student. We can provide a classroom infrastructure. We can provide a teacher. We insist on a student going and sitting in the class, but we can't ensure learning. We normally say we can take a donkey to the water pond, but you can't make the donkey drink the water. To me, here, donkey is the teacher, not the student. You are dealing with horses. You're dealing with people who are more energetic than you, who have bigger life to see than you, who are bound to live longer than you. First point. Generally, a teacher is at least 3 years elder to the student. Very rarely a teacher, in a normal conventional university teaching, a teacher is younger than the students. I have this experience when I've trained the political leaders of this country, a couple of the cabinet ministers, including the Prime Minister. They're in my class, but it's not a conventional class. So that's a different story. That has a different dynamics. Now, my question here is, I never said everything. What have you done which is in your hands? You know what you can do? Can I kindle their desire to learn? Can I make them thirsty? You said you are from economics.
Yes.
I remember my banking teacher. Right? He was supposed to teach banking to us. And we felt, what is the purpose of learning a banking? It is a forced subject on us. It's not an elective. In my BCom, you have to study banking. Like accountancy, you have to study. It's not like cost accountant or some other. It's not an elective. It's like law. You have to learn all these basics. It's like when you go for a meal, they'll give you 2 curries and 2 puris and 2 rice and some sabji and some chawal, some achar and some papad. That's a meal. Okay, now this teacher, you know what he did? It's one of the fascinating things he did. He said, can anybody tell us what is our national anthem? What is the link between national anthem and banking? Zero. Okay, then he said, somebody said Vande Mataram. He said national anthem. So that student realized Vande Mataram is not a national anthem. But the teacher asked, this song which you're mentioning, now you realize it's not a national anthem. If it is not national anthem, what it is? He said, I don't know. He said, it is a national song. It's not a national anthem. Vande Mataram is a national song. What is our national anthem? Oh, somebody said, Jana Gana Mana. I said, fine. Jana Gana Mana is written in which language, he asked. Most of us think that it is in the mother tongue. I don't know how many of you know. Because we are exposed at such a young age, we don't know what is language. At a very young age, and most of the words, you find it in your mother tongue. Most of the words. So none of us do. He said it is written in chaste Bengali. Who has written that? Rabindranath Tagore. Jana Gana Mana. He has written in a chaste Bengali. That is the traditional Bengali, which has got lots of Bengali words. Fine. So that is national anthem. This is national song. Who wrote national song? We don't know. Somebody said another Bengali. He said, what is his name? Some Chatterjee, Bankim Chand Chattopadhyay. Fine. Now, you and I can't see what is the relevance. He said, can somebody sing Vande Mataram? Somebody said, I can tell. Vande Mataram. What is the next line? I'm doing exactly what my teacher did with you. So when nobody answered, the teacher said, Sujalam, Suphalam, Malayaja Sitalam, Sasya Syamalam, Mataram, Vande Mataram. He said, what does Sujalam? Well irrigated. Suphalam, well yielding. India, a large number of people are in agriculture. I'm talking about 40 years ago. Somewhere in 1971, 50 years ago. 73, 74 kind of. Roughly 50 years ago. He said, we need well irrigation. You need water. You need pesticides. You need agricultural implements to increase the yield. So they need money. Otherwise, the money lenders will suck their blood. So what is banking is, purpose of a banking is to give financial support to farmers. So from where to where he came. So for him, banks, the job of a bank is nation building. I hope I answered your question. See, that depends how do you. It doesn't matter where you start. What matters is where you end.
Thank you, sir.
I have a question. I am Sikata Panda from School of Political Science. Can we conclude that efficiency or competence of a teacher solely depends upon his or her ability within the classroom. That is her sincerity or his sincerity. Can we say in that way, interpret in that way? Competence, can we link the competence with his or her ability in the classroom?
Not necessarily, but what matters is what you do in the classroom. See, the question here is most of us believe the job of a teacher is confined to classroom. I firmly believe it's not. What do you make them do before they come to the class? I'll give you a simple example. I provide 3 kinds of reading materials. One reading material, you have to read and then only come to the class. Otherwise, what I say in the class, you can never understand. So I save lots of my class time by making students read 5-page, 2-page, 1-page material. And to ensure that they study that, what I do is I do a quiz. A quick quiz. These quizzes could be surprise quizzes. Every day there may not be a quiz. Suddenly there'll be a quiz, but only on the pre-reading material. So for the sake of those few marks, students will come and they take the quiz. It will have the lowest weightage in the entire evaluation, maybe 30%. If it's 100 marks, 30% weightage will go to quizzes. Now there could be 10 quizzes, there could be 5 quizzes. I also tell them I take n-1. Suppose there are 6 quizzes, I'll take your best performance of 5. The lowest will be ignored. Right? Many students take all these 6 quizzes. Some students, they think that, come on, I've done enough. I don't think I'll get better in the 6th quiz. I won't take the quiz. Don't take it. It's okay. It's up to you. You can be absent for 1. It will be 0. I won't give any marks for writing your name. That's all I tell them. Okay. It's a little extra work for me. Then whatever I teach in the class, there's another set of materials. Now, thanks to technology now, you can give your video of the class to them. See, many people are going in the country rooftop and saying, this pandemic has created problems. For me, it has created a fantastic opportunity. Had there not been this pandemic, Dr. Nagaraj would have insisted that I should come to Sambalpur. Thanks to Corona, we are able to meet like this. Anyhow, this technology existed. Let me also tell you, 1997, February, first week, India has done internet video conferencing through internet legally. I have connected, we have connected. I had a team of people. I'm not a techie guy, but I am in touch with technology. We have connected IIM Bangalore with UNICEF's headquarters in Philadelphia, in the East Coast of America. First video conference in the country. It's possible. We have done it. It's not the question of having technology. Have you leveraged the technology? Now, coming back to your question. What am I saying? I give pre-reading material. They come to the class prepared. There's a little bit of evaluation. There's a little bit of fear. I agree. Whatever I teach in the class, it'll be better understood if you come reading that material.
Yes.
Now, what I do in the class is already documented. Now, even if a student could not concentrate in the class, to some extent, he can connect by reading this material. Now, if a student does not read the pre-reading material, if he does not read the documentation of what has happened in the class, I have a third category of reading. I call this advanced reading. And entire examination is going to be an advanced learning on advanced material. You can never understand what is advanced reading material if you don't go through step 1 and step 2. So for me, the job of a teacher is not confined to the class. First thing. Second thing is, personality does make a difference.
Yes, sir.
Confidence cannot be the only competence. I should have the ability to teach. I might have the desire, but mere desire cannot guarantee ability. If I have a desire, if I put effort, yes, then I can develop ability. I want to become Prime Minister of India today. I have a very strong desire. But do you have the ability? Some time ago, the Prime Minister answered some young boy. He said, till 2024, the seat is not vacant. So you might have a strong desire and ability, but you have no opportunity to become Prime Minister till 2024. That's what he said, not I. I hope I answered your question, madam.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, I have a related question to that. You talked about four different phases of learning: unconscious incompetence, conscious incompetence, conscious competence, unconscious competence. Now, suppose a teacher is in the unconscious competence category. Sir, how to take him to the conscious competence category?
No. See, they are in an order. Unconscious incompetence.
Sir.
To move from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence, you have to increase his exposure. I'll give you a simple example. I'll give an example from Odisha. Till I visited Odisha, called Rourkela, I did not know that there is something called Golgappa. Okay. My cousins used to tell, have you eaten Golgappa? I said, what is Golgappa? I never heard of it, but I heard. Then they told me it is available in Ambagaon, in Rourkela, a small place, marketplace. So I went there and they gave me that. So to move from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence, it happened because of my exposure. None of my brothers got this exposure because they never related to my cousins. Okay, now I move to a conscious incompetence. ये जाके देखना है. जाके देखना है means जाना है वहाँ. So I put in effort to move. Then when I first time tried to eat that, I coughed. The Golgappa, the puchki is so big. And I believe there is a way of opening your mouth and putting it inside. Second time when I tried, all the pani fell on my shirt. Third time when I chewed, something came to my nose. So that shopwala realized that I'm in a stage of learning and I'm moving towards conscious competence. He helped me, a meeta cow. He gave me some sound chutney. Sweet, over, settled. Then he said, "My jada tej nahi dunga aapko, I'll give you less spicy." So he added some other water, added some dhania patta perhaps, added some soap powder and gave me that water. Now, you'll be surprised. Now I can close my eyes in complete darkness. I can take the Golgappa and put it in my mouth. Now I can eat a Golgappa called Pani Puri or Puchki somewhere else, right? Even if it contains instead of water something else. Now people think, how do you do it? It's a sheer question of practice. That's exactly the point I'm saying. Once you attain a level of unconscious competence, please remember, you have a new subject to learn. You're back to unconscious incompetence. I'll give you a simple example. First, I learned what is called, I don't know how many of you know. First, I learned way back in '86. I was working in microcomputers before that. That's a different story. Then I worked in mini computers. Then I started working desktop computers. We had what is called WordStar. That is the first word processing package in the world. Then we got what is called WordPerfect. Then came Word. Right? Now we have a voice text. Please remember one thing. The knowledge grows, since I see some economists, I'm taking an example. The knowledge grows at a geometric progression. The teacher moves at an arithmetic progression. There is always something that you don't know. You don't know. But you don't have to know everything that is available. But do I know what is relevant to my discipline? That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Sir, I have a question. Hello.
Please, sir.
Yes, yes,
Please,
yes.
I'm listening.
Okay.
Everybody is listening.
Okay. Good afternoon. Myself, Professor Sushant Kumar Das. I am the IQAC director of this university. First of all, I'd like to give my sincere, heartfelt thanks to this for this nice talk that you have delivered. And I want to point out one thing. Actually, I did my MTech from IIT Delhi and PhD from IIT Kharagpur. And I did also, now I found actually there is a lot of means hell and heaven difference between this education system. Like IIT or IIM, they are the best institutes, and the education system is quite robust there. But in the university like ours, we have to do lot of things to reach that type of things. Okay. Now, I'd like to know whether in your university, in your institute, whether any performance monitoring of the faculties are done, like let's say in every semester, student certification survey, research output that faculty is giving, and whether faculty is doing any curricular activity, co-curricular or extracurricular activity, etc. Whether it is being done in your institute. I do not know actually why I asked this question. Nowadays, this private university, their growth is very fast. Their growth is based on this type of things. They are strictly monitoring the performance of the faculty, and therefore they are growing very fast. Actually, their quality of education system is also really very good nowadays. You can imagine. Some of the institutes like BITS Pilani, VIT, and others, they are doing excellent. Whether any type of monitoring is done also in IIM and also.
Okay, now this question is a little loaded question. Let me answer it carefully and honestly. First point is, most of the teachers unfortunately think that they're superhuman beings. We evaluate students, we monitor the performance of students, and generally we don't want our performance to be monitored. First point. This is a usual problem anywhere in the world, not just India, not you, not me. However, at IIMs, what we have done is, we have evolved a performance management system where there is a tremendous amount of freedom for the professor or a faculty member. Professor is a designation for me. So I call only a full professor as a professor. I'm very fussy about this. No lieutenant colonel will call himself as a colonel, but that's my position. So there are three positions at IIMs: assistant professor, associate professor, and a professor. So we call all of them as faculty members, the loose word, teachers. Now, each person, there are certain work norms. This is what you're supposed to deliver. So let us presume if you measure in units, you have to show a work of 100 units. Now, how do you earn these 100 units? You have a tremendous amount of freedom. I can say, listen, this year, I will earn 60 units by teaching, 20 units by training, 10 units by PhD guidance. Fine. You decide what is your performance target. Now, once it is agreed by everybody in your department and your departmental head, it becomes a document. Right? Now, you will be evaluated based on that. One. Second, there is a constant feedback mechanism from the students. There is a constant feedback mechanism, inhumanly cruel. I'm using the word inhumanly cruel because students come there for many agenda, not just one agenda. You may be a very knowledgeable person, but you may not be able to deliver in the class. You may not be a very knowledgeable person, but your delivery is very, very impactful. All these dynamics play a role. Now at Institute, what we do is, we give enough of elbow room to the teachers to evolve. First year, I may not be. First year, not in my life, but at IIM. I might have worked for 10 years in BITS Pilani. I would have joined IIM Bangalore. My first 1 year, my teaching feedback may not be that good. That may be because of the change in the students, change in the environment, whatever. So we take a 3-year time period. We don't take 1 year. We give a longer window to have a performance conclusion. So you take a 2 or 3-year period. So I'll tell you one thing. Now, it's very stupid to discard a teacher, according to me. If my performance as a teacher is contingent upon several factors, some of them is who is teaching another class. We have no control on that. If the two teachers don't teach the same subject in two different sections, so we are sensitive to these nuances and these dynamics. As I said, we encourage faculty members to set their performance targets. We encourage them to tell us what kind of facilities that is needed to achieve these targets. We'll provide those facilities. We also have a system wherein if I don't want to teach for 1 year or 1 term, incidentally, I can keep a term free from teaching. Every academic year, I can keep 1 academic term free from not teaching by taking more teaching load in 2 terms. I answered your question.
Good afternoon, sir. Your lecture is
Good evening,
indeed a
Mantel.
good learning experience for me. And yes, passionate faculty is the greatest strength of an organization. And freedom is not without responsibility. I agree with every word of what you said. And it is said that a mediocre teacher tells, a good teacher explains, and the superior teacher demonstrates, and a great teacher inspires. Okay, so I believe that we can inspire not with our words, but with our works, with our deeds only. So I wanted to ask, what are the other ways to inspire the students?
I think providing space to them is important. What am I saying? I asked several of my teachers, listen, the other teachers, but why do you treat me? Though the teaching is over, though I have been a teacher for them 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when I meet them, either in alumni meeting or otherwise, you know what they told me? It all depends on the way you treat. You never treated me as a student when I was a student. Unfortunately, in teaching profession, I've noticed people will become stiff. People will develop a stupor the minute teachers become artificial. I firmly believe by providing more space to student, his learning will improve. What I'm saying is, there can't be only one way. There can be more than one way. You will realize more than one way when you understand there is one way, but not the only way. So, if you tell them this is one way, the student will say that, is there any other way? If you say this is the only way, he will try to say that, listen, what about this way? And if you say that, no, that does not exist, I think the learning stops for the student. So every problem has more than one solution. The problem is we think there is only one solution. When you realize that there's more than one solution, it's a question of which one is better. If you give this elbow room to students in general, over generations, I think students will get inspired. In other words, they will learn not to please the teacher, but they will learn because for them learning has become an enjoyment. As simple as this.
Very well said,
If
sir.
I can make my classroom more quote unquote entertaining, quote unquote informative, insightful, inclusive, I think students will sit in a class. I'll give you a simple example. The measure of your teaching effectiveness can be captured through students who are not just students, would like to listen to you, would like to come and sit in your class, or would learn from your students. I think that's a great achievement. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so much again for that very, very motivating lecture.
Thank you, Ma.
Thank you, Ma. Thank you.
I have only one suggestion if you have no question. A teacher should not only teach any one of us, but since I'm talking to teachers, you need backups. I'll tell you, though it is not very parliamentary, if you don't have a backup, your back will be up. I hope most of you understood this simple English. Teacher requires lots of backups. Just see what has happened today. For no reason, I do not know, I could not connect you to using my laptop. Had I not got my mobile ready and a stand ready, I would not have been able to do this session with you. You will say that, listen, what happens if this mobile fails? I kept another backup. I have a small mobile, right? So what happens is, if one example doesn't work, you should keep a second example. You need a third example. You don't have to have 30, because the very fact that you're going with 3 is enough, and you might evolve a fourth one in the class. That's the power of teaching. I hope this trick is useful to you. You need lots of backups. What happens if the technology fails? Tell me. In the present situation, this is the problem. If you rely blindly on technology that it will work, it may not work. You need backups. If you say that I have an ATM card, I have a credit card, what will you do if the power fails in that shop? What will you do if the swiping machine doesn't work? So you need backup. You need a check for the rainy day. Don't throw a check every day. You need some backup. Thank you.
One small intervention. So thank you for the very engaging talk.
Pleasure, sir. Pleasure, sir. Always a pleasure to be with teachers.
Just one point, what Dr. Pati has asked about institution building. And you very correctly said that it's not just building. Take, for example, we need to bring certain system or value system into the institution, or maybe just those values that are already there. If you want to build them up further, I think that's where you have other factors coming into, maybe like a teacher's background, a student background, the social angle, from which brings us up to the institutional level to which you enter. I think this value system at large that is present around the institution, that also is a huge factor, I believe. What do you say about that?
With you, see, I'll tell you one thing. Teaching is a profession. Teaching is not a job. The job of a teacher is not
teaching. I'm just talking about institution building.
Same is institution building, sir. We are talking about institution building in an academic institution. If a teacher does not do institution building, whom do you expect to do? Tell me, who will do?
Yes.
If you don't protect yourself, who will protect you? Police will protect you. The minute police comes, the situation is changed. See, I'll ask you a simple question. Why do we need so many police people at every junction when we have traffic lights? Since we don't care for traffic lights, you need people to fine you. Look at what has happened in the second wave in the country. The police strength has not increased. Actually, police have stopped supervising. They are also worried about their own life. So they are not very active on the roads. But still, people are not moving. So this is exactly the point I'm saying. I'll tell you some interesting thing. What we do at IIM, somebody is asking me, or even at some of the topmost corporates, they do this. When a student joins, or when an employee joins, they will give him a shock treatment. Very clearly, they make him realize he knows he has learned something, but he does not know many things. The minute a student realizes that he is having an experience which is new to him, that he got a D grade in his life, all his life he is getting A from high school, elementary school, college. Now, once he comes to IIM Bangalore, not more than 20% of people will get A. It's a norm. There is no limit for how many can get D. We have only 4 grade points, A, B, C, D. Most of us will give such a tough assignment. It looks very simple. It looks stupid, but they can't answer. Any amount of thinking, reading will help them to answer that question. Now, the student gets a shock. Now, every guy will find out multiple sources of learning. So they learn beyond the classroom. You know, your son was here. You understand what I'm saying. 18 hours, 20 hours, they work. They work not because we make them work. If they don't work, the system will flush them out. They're not afraid of being thrown out of IIM. They're afraid of their self-esteem. That's what we call it as a pressure building. You know, there's 2 things you have to remember. Faculty members, we don't have attendance. Now, I'm not suggesting that you should follow this. Please remember, the culture building that has happened is different. I've not come across during my tenure of 34 years at IIM Bangalore any faculty member going to any classroom late. Nobody. And there's no punishment. We don't know what is the punishment. But we said it is an insult. I know most of us belong to that category. We never cancelled a class. We made the director wait because I'm in a class. And every director understood. You'll be surprised if a director, your vice chancellor, a director wants to meet a faculty member. So he'll ask, where is he? Suppose he is in canteen, they will send some guy to get him from the canteen. If that guy is in some meeting, some guy will go and get him. But nobody will go and disturb a teacher in a class. This is the value system. When students, I told you now, when I tell the students, even President of India has to wait. Even the Supreme Court Chief Justice has to wait. I am prepared for a contempt of court. But that is after I finish my class. So that's where there is lots of freedom, there is more of responsibility. And this is a shared responsibility. It's not one individual's responsibility.
Exactly. Exactly.
That makes a difference. See, if I work for the Vice Chancellor, I think it will be a doomed university. If a Vice Chancellor works for the sake of faculty members, I think that university is doomed. We work for each other. See, if there is no faculty, what Vice Chancellor can do? If there is no Vice Chancellor, what faculty can do? See, you cannot propagate if you don't have a wife and husband. You can't have a class without a teacher, sir. You can't have a class without students. No, I don't mean physically, even digital. So you need 2. This is what I call this as a shared responsibility. Learning is a shared responsibility. It's not just the responsibility of a student. I hope I am clear.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Now I request our head of the professional courses department, Dr. Srinivas Das, to formally propose a vote of thanks.
Thank you, sir. Very pleasant good evening to all the respected faculty of GM families who are present on these online interactions. I deem it is a great honor and privilege for me to propose the vote of thanks on these memorable events. At first, I would like to give special vote of thanks to our esteemed speaker, Professor Ravi Kumar Sir, former Professor, Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, who despite his busy schedule has found time to grace these online interactions with our respected teachers on how to develop learning ecosystem. Respected speaker has taught the important teaching methodologies, which was very important for all the teachers fraternity, especially in GM universities. And also, esteemed speaker has beautifully explained and taught higher education, IIM, IIT, and also he has suggested that and advised that place is not a very good importance for education, but it will be depend the passionate faculty who can attract of the students in this institute. He has also given beautiful example of Lord Sri Ram character, Pran Jai or Basan no Jai. So definitely, it should be the character of the teachers. He has also defined the educations especially the important for important parameters success, happiness, satisfactions and peace. At last, Sir has beautifully explained that what the importance of the teacher for institutional building. Thank you, sir. Once again, on behalf of the School of Commerce, Economics, Management and University, I express heartfelt thanks to you, sir. I also express my heartfelt thanks to our Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, for his continuous efforts and monitoring us to organize such type of the program for the development of the teaching and research environment of the universities. Once again, I express my heartfelt thanks on behalf of all teachers fraternity of the university, sir. We are also grateful to all head of department, professors, sirs, and all associate and assistant professor of the university who are present and active take part in these online interactions. I also express my special vote of thanks to our PG Council Chairman and Deputy Registrar sir for their active involvement of success of this program. Thank you, sir, once again. I also give special vote of thanks to our Professor A.C. Acharya sir for his proper guidance and supervisions. At last but not least, I have also give thanks to all the technical staff of the universities like Ashish Babu, Priyanka Madam, Khageshwar and Sunil for their efforts and expecting same spirit in future also. Once again, thanks for all the active participants. Once again, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Namaskar.
Thank you so much. Namaskar, sir. Namaskar.